Sarah Martinez woke up every morning at 6:30. She always had the same routine. First, she made a cup of black coffee. Then she sat at her old piano and played scales for 20 minutes. The piano was her grandmother's. It was brown and scratched, but it still made beautiful sounds. After practice, Sarah packed her portable keyboard into a black case. The keyboard was not as good as her real piano, but it was light enough to carry. She also packed a small folding chair, some sheet music, and an empty guitar case for money. Every day she walked 12 blocks to the university area where lots of people passed by. Sarah had been playing piano since she was 6 years old. Her mother worked 2 jobs to pay for piano lessons. Sarah practiced every day after school while other kids played outside. She was good at it, very good. By the time she was 16, she could play pieces that took most people years to learn. When Sarah turned 18, she got into music school. It was expensive, but she worked at a coffee shop at night to help pay for it. She studied classical music and learned about composers like Mozart and Beethoven. Her teachers said she had talent. They said she could become a professional musician, but after she finished school, Sarah found out something hard. Being good at piano was not enough. To get jobs playing in concert halls, you needed to know the right people. You needed connections. Sarah did not have any connections. Her family was not rich. Her father worked at a factory, and her mother cleaned offices at night. Sarah tried to get jobs at hotels and restaurants, but they wanted her to play pop music and jazz. She knew how to play those styles, but her heart was in classical music. The beautiful, complex pieces that made her feel like she was flying when she played them. After months of looking for work, Sarah was running out of money. Her rent was due, and she had only $50 left. That was when she got the idea to play on the street. She had seen other musicians do it. They put out a case or hat, and people gave them money if they liked the music. At first, Sarah felt embarrassed. She had studied music in college. She was trained to play in concert halls, not on street corners. But she needed money, and she loved playing piano more than anything else in the world. The first day she played on the street, Sarah made $23. It was not much, but it was something. A few people stopped to listen. An old man dropped $5 in her case and said her music reminded him of his late wife. A college student sat on a nearby bench for 30 minutes, just listening. Sarah found a good spot near the university. There was a small plaza with benches where students ate lunch and studied. She set up her keyboard there every morning at 9 and played until 5 in the afternoon. Slowly, she started to make enough money to pay her bills. The best part was not the money, though. It was seeing how her music affected people. When Sarah played sad songs, she saw people crying. When she played happy songs, people smiled and walked with more energy. Children danced. Adults stopped checking their phones and just listened. Sarah started to recognize the regular people who walked by. There was a woman in a blue coat who always hurried past, but slowed down when Sarah played Chopin. There was a man with a dog who sat on the bench every Tuesday and Thursday during his lunch break. There were students who changed their walking route just to pass by Sarah's spot. One of the students was named Marcus. He was studying engineering, but he loved music. Marcus started talking to Sarah during her breaks. He told her that her music was the best part of his day. He said it helped him feel calm during stressful times at school. Marcus brought his friends to listen to Sarah play. Soon she had a small group of students who came to hear her music regularly. They requested songs and left bigger tips. Some of them brought their homework and studied while she played soft, gentle pieces. Sarah learned that playing on the street was different from playing in a concert hall. On the street, people did not sit quietly and clap only at the end. They reacted right away. They smiled, they swayed to the music, they sometimes sang along. It felt more alive and real than formal concerts. As weeks passed, Sarah got better at reading her audience. When business people hurried by in the morning, she played energetic pieces that matched their fast pace. When students sat down to eat lunch, she played calmer music that helped them relax. In the late afternoon, when people were tired from work, she played beautiful, peaceful songs. Sarah also learned practical things about street performing. She found out which spots had the best sound. She learned to protect her keyboard from rain and wind. She discovered that playing near coffee shops and restaurants brought more listeners than playing in empty areas. The hardest part was dealing with people who did not appreciate her music. Some people complained about the noise. Others made rude comments about her playing on the street instead of having a real job. A few people even told her to get a job and stop begging. These comments hurt Sarah's feelings, but she tried not to let them stop her. She knew that music was her real job. She was sharing something beautiful with the world. Most people understood that the positive reactions far outnumbered the negative ones. Sarah started to make friends with other street performers. There was a guitar player named Tom who played rock songs 2 blocks away. There was a violinist named Elena who played classical music like Sarah. They looked out for each other and shared tips about the best locations and times to play. Winter was the hardest time. Sarah's hands got cold and fewer people stopped to listen. She bought fingerless gloves and learned to play with stiff fingers. Some days she made very little money, but she kept playing because the music was still in her heart. By spring, Sarah had built up a reputation in the area. Local shop owners knew her and said hello when she walked by. Students looked forward to hearing her play. Some people brought their friends to listen to the piano girl, who played beautiful music near the university. Sarah felt proud of what she had accomplished. She was making a living doing what she loved. She was bringing joy to people's lives. Every day. She was not performing in fancy concert halls, but she was reaching more people than she ever had before. Her music was part of the daily life of the community. Every morning, Sarah still woke up at 6:30. She still made black coffee and practiced scales. But now she looked forward to carrying her keyboard to the plaza. She looked forward to sharing her music with anyone who wanted to listen. She felt like she had found her place in the world. Sarah did not know that soon everything would change. Dean Richards looked out his office window on the 3rd floor of the administration building. He could see the university plaza below where students gathered between classes. Everything looked orderly and proper, just the way he liked it. Dean Richards had worked at Whitmore University for 15 years, and he was proud of the reputation he had built. Whitmore University was known for being serious and prestigious. The students came from good families and paid high tuition fees. The professors were respected experts in their fields. The campus was clean and well-maintained. Dean Richards worked hard to keep it that way. That Tuesday morning started like any other day. Dean Richards arrived at his office at 7:30 sharp. He reviewed his schedule, answered emails, and prepared for a meeting with the Board of Trustees. The university was planning to build a new library, and Dean Richards wanted everything to be perfect. At 9:15, his secretary knocked on his door. Her name was Mrs. Henderson, and she had worked at the university almost as long as Dean Richards. "Sir, we have received some complaints," Mrs. Henderson said. She looked worried. Dean Richards frowned. He did not like complaints. What kind of complaints? About noise near the campus. Some parents called to say there is loud music that disturbs their children's studies. Professor Wilson also mentioned it during yesterday's faculty meeting. Dean Richard set down his pen. "What kind of noise?" "A street musician, sir. Someone playing piano in the plaza area. Apparently it has been going on for several months." Dean Richards felt his face get hot with anger. Street musicians meant chaos. They meant disorder. They made the university look cheap and unprofessional. "Why was I not told about this sooner?" Mrs. Henderson looked uncomfortable. "I believe some people thought it was harmless. But the complaints are increasing." Dean Richards stood up and walked to his window. He looked down at the plaza, and sure enough, he could see a young woman sitting at a keyboard. There were students gathered around her, sitting on benches and listening. Some of them should have been in class. "This is unacceptable," Dean Richards said. "We cannot have random people playing music on university property. What will donors think? What will the trustees say? Should I call campus security?" Mrs. Henderson asked. "No," Dean Richards said. "I will handle this myself." I want to make sure this person understands that this behavior will not be tolerated. Dean Richards put on his suit jacket and straightened his tie. He was a tall man with gray hair and a stern expression. When he walked across campus, students and faculty members always showed him respect. He commanded authority wherever he went. As Dean Richards walked toward the plaza, he could hear the piano music getting louder. The young woman was playing a classical piece that he recognized but could not name. She was actually quite skilled, but that did not matter. Rules were rules. When Dean Richards reached the plaza, he was surprised by what he saw. About 20 students were sitting and standing around the pianist. Some were eating lunch, others were studying, and a few were just listening with their eyes closed. They all looked peaceful and happy. The pianist was a young Hispanic woman with long black hair. Her keyboard was set up on a small table, and she had a guitar case open in front of her with money inside. She was completely focused on her music, her fingers moving quickly and gracefully across the keys. Dean Richards waited for the song too, and then stepped forward. The students noticed him first. Some of them recognized him and looked nervous. The conversation and laughter that had been surrounding the music suddenly stopped. Sarah finished the piece and looked up. She saw a tall, serious-looking man in an expensive suit staring at her with disapproval. She had never seen him before, but his presence made her feel uneasy. "Excuse me," Dean Richards said in his most authoritative voice. "I am Dean Richards. From Whitmore University? Are you aware that you are performing on university property without permission?" Sarah felt her heart start beating faster. "I thought this was a public plaza," she said quietly. "The entire area around this university is considered university property," Dean Richards said, which was not entirely true, but he wanted to make his point clear. "We have received numerous complaints about noise disturbances affecting our students' ability to concentrate on their studies." Sarah looked around at the students who had been listening to her music. They were all watching the conversation with worried expressions. Marcus, the engineering student who had become one of her regular listeners, looked like he wanted to say something but was too nervous. "I am sorry if I caused any problems," Sarah said. "I did not know I was bothering anyone." These students seemed to enjoy the music. Dean Richards looked at the students with annoyance. These students should be in class or studying, not wasting time listening to unauthorized entertainment. You are encouraging them to be irresponsible. "Sir, with respect," Sarah said, trying to stay calm. "I play during lunch hours and breaks. I am not keeping anyone from their classes." Dean Richards did not like being questioned. His voice became harder. "Young lady, I do not think you understand the seriousness of this situation. This is a prestigious academic institution, not a place for street performers. We maintain certain standards here." Sarah felt her face getting red with embarrassment and anger. "I am not just a street performer. I graduated from music school. I studied classical piano for years." "Then you should find appropriate venues for your performances," Dean Richards said coldly. "Concert halls, music schools, legitimate establishments. Not public areas where you disturb serious students." "But I am sharing music with people who want to hear it," Sarah said. "Look around. No one is being disturbed." Dean Richards looked at the students who were still gathered around. Their faces showed a mixture of anger and sadness. He could tell they were on the young woman's side, but he did not care. His job was to maintain order and standards, not to make everyone happy. "What you are doing is essentially begging, Dean," Richards said harshly. "It reflects poorly on the university and the surrounding area. We work hard to maintain a certain image, and unauthorized busking does not fit with that image." Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she tried not to let them show. "I am not begging, I am working. I am making an honest living sharing something beautiful with people. Honest work involves having a proper job with regular employment," Dean Richards said. "Not sitting on street corners with a collection case." Marcus finally found the courage to speak up. "Dean Richards, sir, Sarah's music really helps us students. It makes the campus feel more alive and welcoming. She is not bothering anyone." Dean Richards turned his cold stare toward Marcus. "Mr. Chun, is it?" Perhaps you should spend more time focusing on your engineering studies and less time being distracted by unauthorized activities. Marcus looked confused. Actually, sir, my name is Marcus Johnson, and I maintain a 3.8 GPA. The music helps me study better. Dean Richards waved his hand dismissively. Regardless of your name or grades, you should understand that rules exist for good reasons. This young woman is violating university policies. Sarah began packing up her keyboard. Her hands were shaking slightly from anger and humiliation. I will leave, she said quietly. I do not want to cause trouble. That is not enough, Dean Richards said. I need your assurance that you will not return to any area near this university. If I see you performing anywhere on or near university property again, I will call campus security and city officials. Repeated violations could result in fines or even arrest for trespassing. The students looked shocked. Several of them started to protest, but Dean Richards held up his hand for silence. This is not a negotiation, he said firmly. This is how things will be. I suggest you all return to your studies now. Sarah closed her keyboard case and picked up her chair. The money in her guitar case totaled only $18, barely enough for dinner. She felt humiliated and defeated. All of the joy and confidence she had built up over months of performing was crumbling. As Sarah walked away from the plaza, she could hear Dean Richards addressing the remaining students, telling them to disperse and return to their academic responsibilities. She did not look back, but she could feel their sympathetic eyes watching her leave. Dean Richards watched the young woman disappear around a corner, satisfied that he had handled the situation properly. He had maintained order and upheld university standards. The plaza would return to its quiet, dignified atmosphere, but as he walked back to his office, Dean Richards did not notice the angry and disappointed faces of the students behind him. He did not see them exchanging phone numbers and making plans. He did not realize that his harsh treatment of Sarah had just created something he had not expected. He had created a group of very motivated opponents. Sarah walked home slowly that day, her keyboard case feeling heavier than usual. The confrontation with Dean Richards kept replaying in her mind. His words stung more than she wanted to admit. She had been called worse things before, but something about his cold dismissal of her music felt personal and cruel. When Sarah reached her small apartment, she set down her keyboard and sat on her old couch. The apartment was tiny, with just one bedroom, a small kitchen, and a living room barely big enough for her grandmother's piano. She had chosen this place because she could afford the rent with her street-performing income. Now she did not know what she would do. Sarah had been making about $40 to $60 a day playing near the university. That was enough to pay her rent, buy food, and save a little money. Without that income, she would have to find another job quickly. Sarah opened her laptop and started looking for work. She applied to restaurants, hotels, and music schools. Most places wanted experience she did not have or were only offering part-time work that would not pay enough. By evening, she felt discouraged and worried. Meanwhile, back at the university, the students who had witnessed the confrontation were angry and upset. Marcus and his friend Jessica met at the campus coffee shop to talk about what had happened. That was completely unfair, Jessica said. Sarah was not bothering anyone. If anything, her music made the campus better, Marcus nodded. I cannot believe Dean Richards was so rude to her. She's a really talented musician. She went to music school just like we go here. We should do something, Jessica said. We cannot just let him treat people like that. Other students joined their conversation. Word was spreading quickly about the incident. Many students had grown to love Sarah's daily performances. Her music had become part of their routine, something they looked forward to between classes. Emma Chun was a junior studying communications. She had been working part-time in the university's event planning office, helping organize campus activities. Emma had often listened to Sarah's music while eating lunch, and she was furious about how Dean Richards had treated her. I think we need to organize something, Emma said when she joined Marcus and Jessica at their table. Dean Richards needs to understand that students support Sarah and her music. Like what? Marcus asked. Emma thought for a moment. First, let us start a petition. We need to show that lots of students want Sarah to be allowed to perform on campus. Then maybe we can get the attention of the administration. Jessica pulled out her phone. I can create an online petition right now. What should it say? The group worked together to write a petition asking the university to allow Sarah Martinez to perform in the plaza area. They explained that her music created a positive atmosphere on campus and that she was not disturbing anyone's studies. Within 2 hours, the petition had 50 signatures. By the next morning, it had over 200. Students were sharing it on social media and talking about it in their classes. Many students had stories about how Sarah's music had helped them feel better during stressful times. Emma had another idea. She remembered that some students had recorded videos of Sarah playing and posted them on social media. We should collect these videos and share them, she said. People need to see how talented she is. Marcus found several videos on Instagram and TikTok. One video showed Sarah playing a beautiful version of Clair de Lune while students studied quietly around her. Another showed her playing an upbeat jazz arrangement that made people smile and dance a little while they walked by. The videos started getting shared widely. Students from other universities commented about how they wished they had someone like Sarah on their campus. Some professional musicians even left positive comments about her skill and technique, but Sarah did not know about any of this activity. She was spending her days practicing in her apartment and looking for work. She felt isolated and discouraged. The plaza had not just been a place to earn money. It had been a community where she felt valued and appreciated. After 3 days, Sarah's phone rang. It was Marcus. Sarah, this is Marcus from the university, the engineering student who always listened to your music. Sarah was surprised to hear from him. Oh, hi Marcus. How did you get my number? I hope you do not mind. I got it from Tom, the guitar player who performs downtown. I wanted to ask you something important. Marcus told Sarah about the petition and the social media campaign. He explained that hundreds of students were supporting her and demanding that she be allowed to return to campus. We are not giving up, Marcus said. Dean Richards was wrong to treat you that way. We want you to know that you have lots of friends here. Sarah felt tears in her eyes, but this time they were happy tears. I had no idea anyone cared that much. Are you kidding? Marcus said, your music is one of the best things about our campus. We miss hearing you play every day. Emma called Sarah later that evening. She had been working on something more ambitious than just a petition. Sarah, I have an idea, but I need to know if you would be willing to take a risk. What kind of risk? Sarah asked. Emma explained that she worked in the event planning office and had access to information about upcoming university events. There was going to be a big gala in 2 weeks to celebrate the university's anniversary. Wealthy donors, board members, and important community leaders would be attending. Dean Richards organizes this event every year, Emma said. It is his biggest responsibility. He uses it to show off how sophisticated and cultured the university is. What does that have to do with me? Sarah asked. What if you performed at the gala? Emma said, what if we found a way to get you on the program without Dean Richards knowing? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. That sounds impossible. And dangerous. If Dean Richards found out, he might have me arrested. Maybe, Emma said. But think about it. This gala is full of people who appreciate music and culture. If they heard you play, they would understand how talented you are. They might even put pressure on Dean Richards to change his mind. Sarah was scared but also intrigued. How would we even do something like that? Emma had been thinking about this plan for days. I have access to the event planning system. I could add you to the program under a different name. The gala always has background music during the cocktail hour. What if you replaced the scheduled pianist? But what about the regular pianist? Leave that to me, Emma said. I have some ideas. The important thing is, are you willing to try? Sarah thought about all the months she had spent playing in the plaza. She thought about the students who had listened to her music and told her how much it meant to them. She thought about Dean Richards' cold, dismissive words. "Yes," Sarah said finally. "I am willing to try." Emma was excited but also nervous. "Okay, this is going to require careful planning, and we will need help from other students." Over the next few days, Emma assembled a team of student conspirators. Marcus used his engineering skills to figure out the logistics of getting Sarah's keyboard into the event venue. Jessica, who was studying theater, helped plan the timing and coordination needed to pull off the surprise. They also reached out to sympathetic faculty members. Professor Martinez, no relation to Sarah, from the music department had heard about the situation and quietly expressed his support. He agreed to help if needed, though he could not be directly involved due to his position. The students created a group chat to coordinate their plans. They called themselves Sarah's Symphony and developed code words for their communications in case anyone was monitoring their messages. As the gala approached, Sarah practiced more intensely than she had in months. She chose a special program of music that would showcase her abilities and hopefully win over the audience. She selected pieces that ranged from classical to contemporary, demonstrating her versatility and skill. Sarah also had to overcome her fear. Performing on the street was one thing, but performing at a formal university gala was completely different. The audience would include some of the most important people in the city. If she failed, it would not just embarrass her. It would embarrass all the students who were taking risks to help her. The night before the gala, Sarah could barely sleep. She went over her music again and again, making sure every note was perfect. She tried on the simple black dress she had borrowed from Jessica, hoping she would look appropriate for such a formal event. Emma sent a text message to the group chat. "Tomorrow night, we make history. Sarah's music deserves to be heard." Sarah read the message and smiled. For the first time since her confrontation with Dean Richards, she felt hopeful. Whatever happened at the gala, she would not be facing it alone. She had a community of supporters who believed in her and her music. The next evening, as Sarah prepared to leave for the gala, she looked at herself in the mirror. She thought about her grandmother, who had taught her to play piano on the old brown instrument that still sat in her living room. She thought about all the people who had stopped to listen to her music over the months. "Okay, Grandma," she whispered to herself. "Let us see what happens." The morning of the gala, Emma woke up at 5 in the morning. She could not sleep because she was so nervous about their plan. She had been working on the details for 2 weeks, and now everything had to go perfectly. Emma had a key card that gave her access to the university event spaces because of her part-time job. She had used her computer access to make a small change to the gala program. The regular pianist, Mrs. Patterson, was now listed as taking a brief intermission at 8:30. In her place, the program showed special guest performer S. Martin. Sarah's stage name for the evening. The plan was risky. If Dean Richards noticed the program change before the event, everything would be ruined. But Emma was counting on the fact that Dean Richards was usually too busy on the day of big events to check small details like the music program. Emma met Marcus and Jessica at the campus coffee shop at 7 in the morning. They went over the plan one more time. At 6:30, the gala starts with cocktails in the main ballroom, Emma explained. Dean Richards will be greeting guests and donors. That is when Sarah needs to get inside. Marcus had studied the building layout carefully. There is a service entrance near the kitchen that leads to the backstage area. Sarah can get in there without walking through the main entrance where Dean Richards might see her. "What about security?" Jessica asked. "The security guards know me from my work-study job," Emma said. "I will tell them that S. Martin is a replacement pianist who is running late. They will not question it if I act confident." Jessica's job was to coordinate timing. Mrs. Patterson usually plays background music during cocktails from 7 to 8:30. At 8:25, I will create a distraction that will get her away from the piano. That gives Sarah 5 minutes to set up. The distraction plan was simple but clever. Jessica would pretend to spill red wine on her white dress near the piano. Mrs. Patterson, who was very kind, would surely offer to help her clean up. That would give Sarah time to take her place at the piano, but there were many things that could go wrong. What if Mrs. Patterson did not want to help? What if Dean Richards noticed Sarah before she started playing? What if the security guards asked too many questions? Emma tried not to think about all the problems that might happen. She focused on the positive outcome they were hoping for. If Sarah performed well, the audience would love her music. The wealthy donors and board members would see how talented she was. Maybe they would even pressure Dean Richards to change his mind about street performers on campus. At noon, Emma went to her work-study job in the event planning office. She had to act normal so no one would suspect anything. Her supervisor, Mrs. Clark, was running around checking last-minute details for the gala. "Emma, can you double-check the catering setup?" Mrs. Clark asked. "And make sure the sound system is working properly?" Emma was happy to check the sound system. It gave her a chance to test the microphones and piano without anyone being suspicious. Everything was working perfectly. During her lunch break, Emma called Sarah. "How are you feeling?" Sarah's voice was shaky. "I am terrified. What if I mess up? What if I get arrested? What if I embarrass everyone who is trying to help me?" "Sarah, you are an amazing musician," Emma said. "I have seen you play dozens of times. You never mess up. Tonight will be no different." "But this is different," Sarah said. "Those people in the plaza knew me. They wanted to hear me play. Tonight I will be performing for strangers who might not want me there." Emma understood Sarah's fear, but she also knew that Sarah's music was powerful enough to win over any audience. "Remember, you are not just performing for strangers. You are performing for all the students who support you. You are performing for everyone who believes that music should be shared freely." That afternoon, the students made their final preparations. Marcus borrowed a university maintenance uniform from his friend who worked in facilities. This would let him move around the building without attracting attention. Jessica practiced her wine-spilling technique to make sure it looked accidental but effective. Emma created fake work orders on her computer that would explain why she needed to be in different areas of the building during the event. She also printed an official-looking badge for Sarah that said "Special Guest Performer." At 4 in the afternoon, Sarah arrived at the campus and met Emma at the service entrance. Sarah was carrying her portable keyboard in a professional-looking case. She wore the black dress Jessica had lent her, and she looked elegant and sophisticated. "You look perfect," Emma said. "Are you ready?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I am as ready as I will ever be." Emma led Sarah through the service corridors to a small room backstage. The room was used for storage, but it had a chair and a table where Sarah could wait. From this room, Sarah could hear the sounds of the gala beginning, voices, laughter, and the gentle background music that Mrs. Patterson was playing. "Wait here until 8:25, Emma said. "That is when Jessica will create the distraction. When you hear the music stop, count to 30, then walk to the piano." Sarah nodded, but Emma could see that she was still nervous. "Sarah, can I tell you something?" Emma said. "The reason we are doing this is not just because Dean Richards was mean to you. We are doing this because your music makes people happy. It makes the campus a better place. Tonight you have a chance to show important people what we already know, that music brings communities together." At 6:30, the gala officially began. Emma put on her event staff badge and walked into the ballroom. The room was beautiful, with elegant decorations and soft lighting. About 200 people were there, all dressed in formal clothes. They were drinking wine and chatting while Mrs. Patterson played gentle classical music on the grand piano. Dean Richards was in his element. He wore an expensive tuxedo and moved confidently through the crowd, shaking hands and making small talk with donors and board members. Emma could see that he was enjoying being the center of attention. Marcus, wearing his borrowed maintenance uniform, was setting up additional chairs in case more guests arrived. No one paid any attention to him, which was exactly what they had. Hope. Jessica was dressed elegantly and blending in with the other guests. She was carrying a glass of red wine and positioning herself near the piano, waiting for the right moment to create her distraction. At 8 o'clock, Dean Richards stepped up to a microphone to welcome the guests officially. He talked about the university's achievements and thanked the donors for their support. He mentioned the new library that would be built with their contributions. Tonight we celebrate not just our past accomplishments, but our bright future. Dean Richards said, Whitmore University continues to maintain the highest standards of academic excellence and cultural sophistication. Emma felt a little sick hearing Dean Richards talk about cultural sophistication while Sarah sat alone in the storage room, waiting for her chance to share her gift with the world. At 8:15, Emma sent a text message to the group chat. 10 minutes to go, everyone in position? Marcus replied, ready. Jessica replied, ready. Sarah replied, scared but ready. Emma walked over to where Mrs. Patterson was playing. The older woman was a skilled pianist, but her style was very different from Sarah's. She played softly and simply, creating pleasant background music that did not demand attention. At exactly 8:25, Jessica put their plan into action. She was walking near the piano when she accidentally bumped into someone and spilled red wine all over the front of her white dress. "Oh no," Jessica said loudly enough for Mrs. Patterson to hear. "I am so clumsy." Just as they had hoped, Mrs. Patterson immediately stopped playing and came over to help. "My dear, do not worry about it. Let me help you find somewhere to clean that up." Double quotes, Mrs. Patterson led Jessica toward the ladies' room, leaving the piano bench empty. Emma quickly sent a text to Sarah, now. Sarah left the storage room and walked quickly but quietly toward the piano. Her heart was beating so fast she thought everyone would be able to hear it. She could see Dean Richards across the room, still talking to a group of board members with his back turned to the piano. Sarah sat down at the piano bench and looked out at the crowd of well-dressed people. Most of them were not paying attention to the piano area since the music had stopped. They were busy with their conversations and drinks. Sarah placed her hands on the keys and took one final deep breath. Everything she had worked for over the past months led to this moment. All the support from the students, all the planning and risk-taking, all the hope that music could change people's minds. It all came down to the next few minutes. In the crowd, Emma, Marcus, and Jessica watched nervously. Dean Richards was still talking to the board members, unaware that anything unusual was happening. Sarah began to play. Sarah's fingers touched the piano keys, and the first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled the ballroom. The sound was soft and gentle at first, like a whisper that gradually grew stronger. The conversations in the room did not stop immediately. People were still talking and laughing, focused on their wine and their business discussions. But slowly, one by one, guests began to notice that something had changed. The music was different. It was more beautiful, more emotional than the background music they had been hearing earlier. Sarah played with her eyes closed, letting the music flow through her fingers the way she had done hundreds of times in the plaza. She tried to forget about the formal setting and the well-dressed audience. She tried to pretend she was back on campus, playing for the students who had become her friends. Emma watched from across the room as more and more people stopped their conversations to listen. She could see guests turning toward the piano with surprised and pleased expressions. The music was having exactly the effect they had hoped for. Marcus, still wearing his maintenance uniform, was standing near the back of the room. He had tears in his eyes as he listened to Sarah play. This was the same beautiful music he had heard during his lunch breaks, but now it was reaching a much larger audience. Dean Richards was still talking to a group of board members near the bar area. He had his back to the piano, so he did not immediately notice that Mrs. Patterson was no longer playing. He was discussing the plans for the new library, feeling proud and confident about the evening's success. As Sarah finished the Chopin piece, something magical happened. The entire ballroom had grown quiet. 200 people were standing in complete silence, listening to her music. When the last note faded away, there was a moment of perfect stillness. Then someone started clapping. It was a woman in an elegant blue dress near the front of the room. Soon others joined in, and the applause grew louder and more enthusiastic. Sarah opened her eyes and saw all the faces looking at her with appreciation and amazement. She had not expected such a positive reaction so quickly. In the plaza, it had taken months to build up a regular audience. Here, she had won people over with just one song, but Sarah knew that one song was not enough. She needed to show these people the full range of her abilities. She moved smoothly into her next piece, a jazz arrangement of Summertime that she had learned from listening to recordings of great jazz pianists. The jazz piece had a completely different feel from the classical Chopin. It was playful and energetic, with complex rhythms and improvised sections that showed off Sarah's technical skills. Several guests began swaying slightly to the music, and some were smiling and nodding their approval. Dean Richards finally noticed that something unusual was happening. He turned around and saw that all his guests were facing the piano, listening intently to whoever was playing. The music sounded different from Mrs. Patterson's usual style. It was more sophisticated and emotionally engaging. Dean Richards began walking toward the piano area to see what was going on. As he got closer, he could see that a young woman with long black hair was sitting at the piano. She looked familiar, but he could not quite place where he had seen her before. Sarah transitioned into her third piece, a modern arrangement of Claire, de Lune that combined classical technique with contemporary harmonies. This was the song that had made many students cry when she played it in the plaza. Tonight was no different. She could see several people in the audience wiping their eyes. It was during this piece that Dean Richards finally got close enough to recognize who was playing. His face went white with shock and anger when he realized that the street performer he had banned from campus was now performing at his most important event of the year. Dean Richards started walking quickly toward the piano, planning to stop the performance immediately. But as he moved through the crowd, he noticed something that made him pause. The guests were completely captivated by the music. Their faces showed the kind of deep appreciation and emotional connection that rarely happened at university events. Board member Mrs. Davidson, one of the university's most important donors, was standing near Dean Richards with tears streaming down her face. "This is the most beautiful music I have heard in years," she whispered to her husband. "Who is this remarkable pianist?" Mr. Chun, a wealthy businessman who had donated money for the new library, was recording the performance on his phone. "I must find out if this young woman gives private concerts," he said to the person next to him. "My wife would love to hear her play." Dean Richards found himself in an impossible situation. He wanted to stop Sarah's performance and have her removed from the building. But doing so would create a scene in front of his most important guests, people who were clearly enjoying the music immensely. Sarah began her fourth piece, an upbeat arrangement that combined elements of classical, jazz, and contemporary music. This piece showed her versatility and creativity, demonstrating that she was not just technically skilled, but also artistically innovative. The energy in the room was electric. People were no longer just standing and listening politely. They were fully engaged with the music. Some were dancing slightly, others were conducting along with the rhythm, and many were smiling with pure joy. Emma, Marcus, and Jessica watched Dean Richards from different parts of the room. They could see his internal struggle, his anger at being outsmarted competing with his recognition that the performance was a huge success. Sarah moved into her final piece. She chose something that held special meaning for her, a song her grandmother had taught her when she first started playing piano. It was a simple Mexican folk melody that her grandmother had learned as a child, but Sarah had arranged it with sophisticated harmonies that honored both its traditional roots and her classical training. This personal touch made the performance even more powerful. The audience could sense that this final song meant something special to Sarah, and they listened with even greater attention and respect. When the last note faded away, the ballroom was silent for several long seconds. Then the applause erupted, like thunder. It was not polite, formal clapping, it was enthusiastic, emotional appreciation from people who had been genuinely moved by what they had heard. One by one, guests began standing up. Mrs. Davidson was the first, followed by Mr. Chun and his wife. Soon, the entire room was on their feet. giving Sarah a standing ovation that lasted for several minutes. Sarah stood up from the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. She had dreamed of moments like this when she was studying in music school, but she had never expected it to happen under such unusual circumstances. Dean Richards found himself in the strange position of having to join the standing ovation. All around him, the university's most important supporters were applauding enthusiastically. If he remained seated or tried to stop the applause, he would look foolish and ungrateful. Reluctantly, Dean Richards stood up and clapped along with everyone else. His clapping was not enthusiastic, but he was clapping nonetheless. Mrs. Davidson approached Sarah as the applause finally began to die down. "My dear, that was absolutely magnificent," she said, taking Sarah's hands in hers. "I have attended hundreds of cultural events, and I have rarely been so moved by a musical performance." "What is your name?" "Sarah Martinez," Sarah said, still feeling overwhelmed by the positive response. "Well, Miss Martinez, you are extraordinarily talented. Where do you usually perform?" Sarah glanced nervously at Dean Richards, who was now standing nearby looking extremely uncomfortable. I usually perform on street corners and in public spaces." Mrs. Davidson looked surprised. "Street performances? But my dear, you have the skill to perform in the finest concert halls. Have you considered applying for positions with symphony orchestras or chamber music groups?" Before Sarah could answer, Mr. Chun joined the conversation. "Miss Martinez, would you be available to perform at private events? I would love to hire you for my wife's birthday celebration next month." More guests gathered around Sarah, all of them praising her performance and asking about future opportunities to hear her play. Business cards were being exchanged, phone numbers were being given, and several people were talking about recommending Sarah to music venues and event planners they knew. Emma, Marcus, and Jessica watched all of this with huge smiles. Their plan had worked better than they had ever imagined. Not only had Sarah won over the audience, but she was also getting real professional opportunities from her performance. Dean Richards stood at the edge of the group, watching his guests shower attention and praise on the young woman he had banned from campus just 2 weeks earlier. He could see that several board members were looking at him expectantly, clearly assuming that he had been the one to arrange for such a talented performer to play at the gala. Professor Williams from the music department approached Dean Richards. "Richard, I must congratulate you on discovering such a remarkable talent. Miss Martinez's performance was truly extraordinary. I hope the university will find ways to work with her in the future." Dean Richards forced a smile. "Yes, she is ... Mrs. Davidson came over to Dean Richards with Sarah following behind her. "Dean Richards, you simply must tell me how you found Miss Martinez. I want to make sure she gets the recognition